morning, folks. Just wanted to talk through some of this keyline pattern cultivation stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this protractor and talk through some of this with some other coloured pens. So let's start off with just drawing this line. It's not very good. I'll start. Try the other end. Just hold this properly. I'm going to say that that is the contour at the bottom of a hill. Might be the same as the contour on your fingernail here, which I'll just blacken. And when you look at, actually I'll use this one, when I highlight that contour, this is often what happens at the bottom of a ridge line, is what you'll have is a contour that's right at the bottom, and then the ridge will drop off to get part of a new system, which might be a creek or a river or a secondary valley or something. Now when you go up the contours of that landscape, in this case the handscape, then the contours don't necessarily have the same shape as the contour that you started off with, and so as you go up, those contour shapes are fine. Now once it are different. But the big thing about keyline pattern cultivation is, so if I've just drawn my fingernail on here or the bottom contour, is that whenever I go inside of a curve, the shape is going to get tighter and tighter. And of course, it's not completely parallel. Well, it's not completely the same. I shouldn't say it is parallel, but it's not the same shape as the original line. So, and you can see that by me, if I take this original shape, which is drafted or is shown here with this protractor, and I then mark that line in there like so, and then I mark another one in around about the same interval again, or spacing. You can see that they just don't match up. It's just geometrically impossible to do. So what we do with keyline is, I'll just use this blue pen here, is we do what's called parallel cultivation. So I'll just do what so with this you will go in and first up you'll mark your contour. So you'll get out there with your flags and in the landscape, and with an A-frame or a laser level or a dumpy level or a bunyip level, whatever it is, you'll go and you'll mark a level line, and then the trick is to go parallel inside of that. Now, so let's just have a look at what that looks like. So if I'm going to run parallel inside of that, it's not going to have the same exact shape as the original line. And so let's have a look. So I'll just approximate this. It'd be better if I go all the way around, a bit easier for me. So I'm going to try and stay equidistant, so therefore parallel with the original line, and I'm going to go around like so. And then I'm going to try it again. And just do my best to sort of fudge this. Around we go. And then again, I'll do this a couple of times so I can make a really important point. So it's not turning out too bad so far, even with the pressure of a video running. Now we'll get to a point where if I'm doing this with a tractor or with a lawnmower or even a horse-drawn anything, something that's pulling something, which is typically what we're doing in this kind of setup, is it'll come to a point where the radius of the turn is too tight for us to take the curve. So, and that's not far off happening, I can see. And you'll see this, anybody who has mowed a lawn or ploughed a field you'll often start off on the outside of that field. So here's the field, and then you'll start off on the outside and you work your way around, and you can take the turns all fine, and then there'll come a point where you just can't take the turns on on the same radius, because as you get inside, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until it becomes square, and you end up with that. That's what we're looking at here. So even though I am completely parallel with the original line, it's not of completely the same shape, as we'll see in a moment. It's parallel but not the same shape. It gets to a point now where that radius is very tight, and there's no way that you can take that turn. So what we do with Keyline now is we'll do that as much as we can until it ceases to be practical, and then what we'll do is we might start with a new contour. Now, just to keep it simple, let's look at this original one again. I'm going to go to a point where I'll say, well, look, probably this one of these, probably these last two are not practical. This one and this one might be, but let's not do this one. Let's not do this one, and let not do that one. So we'll go to that one, and what we'll say now is we'll mark a new contour, which is part of the genius of this, is that instead of having to mark out every contour, you just mark out those as you need it. Once the radius becomes too tight, then you'll mark out a new one. So let's say that's the next contour as you go up the slope, or conversely, this might be falling down a valley as well, in which case you can clearly see that as these lines come down, these parallel lines come down, that they get to a point where they literally cross the contour, and that being the case, then they are clearly lower. So this point here is higher than this point here, right? Because it's falling all the way to the point where it crosses the contour, which means that all of these lines have a fall in that direction, and conversely over the other side. So that's the basic premise of, or the basic objective of Keyline pattern cultivation. Right, so now let's go parallel again, and I'll use a different color this time. I'll use the red, where I'm going to run parallel with this new line, with this next contour line. Right, and around we go. All the way, and then again, and you start to get the picture of what I'm going on about here. So the question, because the question often is, and I see this a bit, what people will do some sort of adjustment or readjustment. They'll do just a couple of lines, or they'll put, which is a fairly new thing I've seen people do, is putting gradient limits onto individual lines, and that's all fine. I mean, if you want to do that and go to the trouble of doing that, I just wanted to demonstrate the simplicity of the original framework that Yeomans came up with, which was to just basically do what I'm doing. So if you're out in the landscape, every time you get to a point where you can't take the curve any better, I've done a bit of a hash of that, then what you do is you establish a new contour, and which is a very simple thing for anybody to mark out. And then once no gradients required, no gee whizzery, then what you'll do is just mark that new contour out, and you'll be right to go. So you can get to that point, right? Now, so I've marked this one contour out. I've then run parallel with that until a point where I can't go, where I'll stop with these ones. So that one's not done, this one's not done. I'll mark a new contour out. So I'll go along and with my whatever level and mark a new one out. and then I'll run parallel to that, and you can see that again I'll get to a point where I'll just won't be able to take the curve, and it might be, say, these last two, and I'll affect a new contour, and off we go. I mean, I'm obviously making the assumption here that each of these contours has the same shape, but in actuality it's likely that they're going to get less, there's going to be less and less of a radius there as you go further up a slope or go further down. As you go down a slope in a valley, then the contours tend to flatten out. As you go up a slope on a ridge, then the contours also happen to flatten out. So the main premise that I keep saying to people, or the main thing to remember with keyline pattern cultivation and its application, is always run inside of a curve. And you run inside of that curve until such time as you can't take the curve anymore because the radius gets too tight. Then you set a new contour and away you go. And you don't have to worry about all of these gradient restrictions and all of the rest of it. Why do people put gradient restrictions? It's a concern which I think is reasonable around the erosion, because people will put the gradient of these particular lines that I've got going on down here is reasonable. I mean, it's clearly crossing the contour, but and it's certainly going to be more than 1, 2, or 4% or whatever people put on these arbitrary maximum gradients that people put on these lines. But if you have an effective set of landscape management, and if you do keyline pattern cultivation effectively and have good landscape management, good landscape function, then there's no reason why you can't just follow the original keyline pattern and sort of burden yourself with all of this complexity that comes with putting gradient limits on those lines. Anyway, I hope that that's explained my position and that of, well, it's not my position, it's that of the originator of Keyline, P.A. Yeomans, and I hope that illuminates things a bit further, and we'll no doubt go from there. Thank you very much, and it's Darren from Agrarians.